So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor and it is our privilege to have. He is, look, no one looks better. In fact, I have hope as a man who as short as I am, but if you have a fresh haircut, a trim, firm beard, and you look as good in a three-piece, nice-looking suit on national television as Adam Amin does, you can get a lot of places. But of course, he has a great, wonderful voice as well. Adam Amin of Fox Sports joins us here on the Full Court Press. Adam, my man, thank you.
What the hell was that intro?
Do you like that or no? I liked it.
It was very kind. It was way off base. Like, just because it's objectively wrong. Like, I don't think most people can agree on this.
I've seen you on national television. I'm telling you, like, I'm like, you know what? I might be short. But and with all due respect, I say this, Adam. I see the haircuts, the trim beards, and I say, if I can look like that, I've got a shot.
That is very kind. That is very kind of you to say. I appreciate that. That's tremendous. I take that to heart. My heart is full. That is very kind of you to say.
You also feel incredibly awkward right now too, and I don't blame you. So forgive me. Adam,
you alleviated a little bit, so I do appreciate it. At least there's that.
Adam, congratulations on your new gig with Fox Sports. We're happy for you. I wanted to ask, and I know this sounds a little bit egocentric to make you answer this, but what was the transition and the decision to go from ESPN, where you called some incredibly memorable games, to go to Fox Sports?
I think just the opportunity to grow a little bit at Fox and to challenge, to take on a new challenge of, focusing on Major League Baseball and the NFL and kind of locking in and narrowing down the portfolio a little bit. The Bulls thing had a lot to do with it. It was just the flexibility of being able to do all of it. Not that ESPN wouldn't have been. It's just really a good fit, at Fox. And I don't think I wouldn't have left if I didn't feel that it was the right time and the right opportunity. I thought very carefully about this. So it was certainly a difficult thing. In the first world problem sense of things, like, where do I want to work? It's a very fortunate, very lucky position to be in. So I understand that, but it was definitely a difficult decision for a lot of factors. 9 years at one place that you like a lot and grew up at. It's not easy to leave, but I feel like I made the right choice and the right decision.
What's your schedule looking like now, going from basically a summer without sports to every sport imaginable back in July?
I mean, we'll see. That's the thing. We're all kind of in a holding pattern as it is right now. Most broadcasters and most networks are as well, until there's a schedule created. That the one thing is it's good to have an opening day set, July 23rd or 24th. It's good to have the NBA back late in last 2 days of July. But until a schedule is created, you can't really create a TV schedule to follow it up. So that's still the next step, and that's what the next several weeks are gonna reveal to a lot of us. So we're looking forward to it.
Your talent has allowed you to call so many different sports. I know this is kind of a broad question to ask you, but is there a stadium that you haven't been in that you've been desperately wanting to be a part of to call a game?
I mean, getting to go to a lot of these college towns affords you unique opportunities to enjoy a unique atmosphere. Like, that's the one thing about, the word unique means one of a kind. And every place you go to, in particular in college football, is one of a kind. Like, it's very specific to that place and that city and that town and that university and that school. So, there's so many that I never had an opportunity to check out on the college, especially on the college football end of things, whether it's in the Pac-12 or the Big Ten in particular. I got to see a lot of the SEC, a lot of the ACC. I made my rounds in those places, but Big Ten, Pac-12 didn't really get to experience as much as I would have liked to. In my time covering college football, there's a bunch out there, man. Michigan, Notre Dame. Two places I hadn't been to yet. A couple spots in the SEC that I still would have, liked to check out, but nothing that I look back on and say, shoot, I can't believe I didn't get a chance to go there. When you get as many opportunities to do some cool stuff as I was lucky enough to do. You're gonna get your fill of just cool experiences if you look at them individually. So.
With all the sheer amount of just different events, sporting events and sports you've covered, what was the toughest one to get prepared for?
I would say on a weekly basis, probably college football, just because of the sheer depth of the rosters. Like the NFL is a cakewalk in comparison to college football, just because there's 53 per roster, only 46 are going to dress on Sunday. That's less than 100 people that you have to worry about, and that's one roster potentially in college. You don't know who's dressing, who's not. They got double numbers, like just so by just sheer depth of information, the sport is so big. Like it's so interconnected. What happens in the ACC could potentially affect a team in the Big Ten, and it could affect a team in the Big 12, and that's just how college football is created. That's the infrastructure of it, and there's so much connectivity to it that you really have to be up on all of it, especially if you're covering it at a high level and you're covering teams that are in the playoff picture or the big game picture. So I think just by sheer depth alone, college football is probably the most difficult. But in terms of like depth of history, Major League Baseball, just the level of history that is revered in that sport. I mean, that makes that difficult. Each one is unique. Each one has its specific challenges. But I think if we're talking about depth, then it's probably like college football and Major League Baseball.
You've been able to call the women's Final Four in some of the most memorable games probably in women's Final Four history, without a doubt, and also women's College Softball World Series. Can you talk about the appreciation you have for those women athletes and what they're able to, the show they're able to put on for the fans?
Yeah, it's just I went into it not thinking about it in that sense. I never have, and that goes back to when I played, volleyball in junior high. That wasn't considered necessarily like it wasn't like up to the level of football in terms of masculinity. It's just a sport that I liked, and and when you start playing it, it's hard. It's like the rigors of it are unique to that sport, but like it's a hard sport to be good at. So my appreciation level for it just skyrocketed, whether it was men's or women's. It didn't matter to me anymore. Our teams played the women's teams all the time, and we all got better because of it. So it never struck me as odd to think of women's sports, or it struck me as odd to think of women's sports differently than men's. It was just, in my perspective, it was just, hey, it's a sport. Let's go cover it. When we got to college at Valpo, the first sport I asked to cover was the women's volleyball team, because I had played and I loved the sport and I wanted to broadcast it. And I got that opportunity. So when I was immersed in it right away, it never occurred to me as being anything other than just the next game to call or the next game to cover or the next team to interview or whatever it was. And I think having that level of kind of conditioning to it, and then going to my first full-time job out of school, covering, a really successful girls basketball team. Like I don't really care that it's a girls team. I'm just happy they're good. So we have something exciting to cover. I think that's where it comes from, just an appreciation for it as a sport and not as something that has to be treated with any type of other gloves, just to treat it with the same level of respect and preparation that you would any big event. I think that's probably the thing that I'm, or it's certainly one of the things I'm proudest of in my time at ESPN, is that we tried to elevate women's sports, not because they were women's sports, but because they were really good and they were entertaining as much as any other sports I would cover. So why would I treat them any differently? And I'm proud of how we try to elevate that coverage. Great answer.
Mr. Amin, congratulations again on being announced, going to be one of the main TV announcers for the Chicago Bulls. What are the big differences and different challenges between doing the same team with, like you will with the Bulls, versus doing a set events like with college football where you're not necessarily following the same team each week?
Yeah, I think what's cool about it is you get to invest a little bit more of yourself into the job. That fandom that I had. So, and again, the Bulls are my hometown team. I grew up with them.
Go Bulls.
I'm I'm very familiar with I'm familiar with the emotional connectivity of this team. So I think having that and being able to put a little bit of that into the call and into the job and how you perceive, two different teams, like you get to perceive one team as better, like as the heroes of that particular night. Like you're working with that group, and that's fun. That concept sounds fun to me. It sounds like a new challenge. It's something I haven't really been able to do outside of a couple spurts in probably 9 years. Last time I worked for a team full time was 9 years ago. So that excites me. I think the challenge of it is to try to be as informed on the other team as possible, because you're going to know so much about your team. And then it's one thing to have as much knowledge as possible. You have to kind of be judicious in how you distribute that knowledge. Like if I'm doing a national NBA game and it's the Bulls and the Kings, I'm going to probably discuss both teams to a fair, equality. Not, the game itself is going to dictate who you talk about more. If I'm doing Bulls Kings for the Bulls, like I'm not going to give you as much info on the Kings because you don't really need to know it. You need to know the treetop stuff as a Bulls fan. But then you have to kind of figure out how much of these same stories are you going to tell for your own team? How do you keep the broadcast fresh every night? If the Bulls are struggling, how do you navigate through that? Which, again, the last couple of years has been good practice. The Bulls were out of the playoff hunt in a couple games I called. They were in the playoff hunt in a handful of games I called. I've seen both sides of it. So those are just some of the, I know kind of a long answer, but those are just some of the different challenges and nuances of it.
Let's go into the sports broadcaster fantasy world. If there's one guy you could have as a color analyst for any game, who would it be?
Man, great question. If I had the chance to work with John Madden to do like a Super Bowl, I think that'd be pretty cool. I've known him in different spaces of my life. Like I knew him as a kid as like the guy on TV, and as like a teenager I knew him as like the video game guy, and now I kind of understand the full scope of why he's so important to football, to the NFL in particular. So if I had a chance to do a game with him, I think that'd be awesome.
Who's the play-by-play guy that you looked up to, that you listened to as you were growing up?
Well, I mean, there's so many, especially coming from Chicago. There's a lot of great ones. I imagine. I don't know where you guys are all from, but if it's a Utah show,
Utah. Yep.
So I imagine Hot Rod Hundley was probably a guy that a lot of people listen to. I know David Locke does a lot of good work now and has for a long time. Like, those were guys that, the Hot Rod Hundley of Chicago is like Neil Funk, or Jim Durham or Pat Hughes. Like there's a lot of those types of guys in this city in particular. So you grow up with a lot of good influences. And then when you start to do the job, or like I'm going to school, going to college, I'm starting to become more of a student of it, you naturally latch on to a lot of the national broadcasters just because they're calling most of the games that you're watching, So it's a mix of a lot of Chicago people and a lot of national people, many of whom I now get to call colleagues, and at times coworkers. So it's been cool to have that, relationship eventually with a Dan Schulman or an Ian Eagle or a Mike Tirico or a Sean McDonough. It's cool to, be able to call those people colleagues. It's a very cool experience.
Adam, I waited till the end because I'm from northern Indiana, so I'm a Bulls fan as well. And I wanted to ask you what you make of the Chicago Bears quarterback situation as a fan.
Good gosh.
I want to know. I'm a Bears fan. He's from Chicago. He's a Chicago fan.
I mean, I call the preseason games, so like
there you go.
But this will be my third year doing their preseason games, assuming we have one, and I think it's good for Mitch to be pushed. he hasn't really been, the last couple of years, he hasn't really been pushed in the position. And like, I love Chase Daniel. I think like he's an awesome human being, and he was a really good, capable quarterback. He wasn't pushing Mitch Trubisky for the starting job, and now I think there's potential there to kind of get Mitch into a place where he is, I think he needs a little bit of a push. I think he's got a chip on the shoulder mentality, and I think he takes some things to heart. And I think having somebody there to really truly challenge him for the job is a good thing for him. And if he gets beat out, like, you're looking right now at the backup quarterback position being more important than ever. That is pre-COVID-19. Now with this added element to hopefully a 2020 season, like with this as an added element, the backup quarterback is that much more important. So I don't think having somebody who's got a Super Bowl ring in that position as a potential backup or maybe as a starter, I don't think that's a bad thing by any means.
Adam, you are so damn good. This was so much fun. That was the quickest 15 minutes I could have ever. It's a shame that it has to come to an end. But thank you so much for your time. Greatly appreciate you. We'll be watching for you. Wish you the best.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate you.
Thanks,
you bet.
Adam.
You bet.